Hey guys, tonight we are diving into one of history's most bizarre and unsettling medical mysteries. We're talking about a plague whose only symptom was dancing. A contagious, uncontrollable, deadly dance. Imagine a party you literally couldn't leave, where the beat drops and never, ever stops, until you do. We're going to drop you right into the middle of it, in a city on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Spoiler alert, your survival odds are great, and your dance moves probably won't help. This is the story of the dancing plague of 1518. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment letting me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel, from late-night listeners in London to early risers in Manila. It's a quiet little global community we have here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you is the heat. It's July and the sun beats down on the cobblestone streets of Strasbourg with a kind of personal vengeance. The air is thick, heavy, and carries a potent cocktail of river mud from the nearby Ill, the comforting smell of baking bread from a lucky baker's oven, and the vaguely sour scent of unwashed humanity in livestock. It's the smell of a city sweating through a long, oppressive summer. This is your world, Strasbourg, a free imperial city within the vast and messy patchwork of the Holy Roman Empire. The year is 1518. Timber-framed houses, 4 or 5 stories high, lean towards each other over the narrow alleyways, almost touching, casting the streets below in a permanent state of twilight. You keep your head down as you walk, navigating the ruts and puddles left by a brief, useless morning shower. Rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer is a familiar part of the city's soundtrack, as is the rumble of a wooden cart being dragged over the uneven stones by a weary-looking ox. But underneath these everyday sounds there's a low, anxious hum. It's a tension you can feel in your bones. The city is suffering. The harvests have been bad for several years now. Not just a little disappointing, but catastrophically bad. Famine has been stalking the countryside, and its shadow looms large over the city walls. The bread you ate this morning, if you were lucky enough to have any, was likely a dull, gritty affair, bulked out with whatever filler could be found: sawdust, tree bark. You name it, your stomach feels tight, a familiar knot of hunger and worry. Disease is a constant, unwelcome neighbor. Leprosy is still a terrifying reality, and a new, frightening illness people are calling the sweating sickness has been whispered about in markets and taverns. You see more beggars on the streets these days, their faces gaunt, their hands outstretched. You also see more orphans, small, silent figures darting through the crowds, their parents taken by hunger or sickness. There's a fragility to life here that everyone understands, but no one speaks of. And it's not just God or nature that's testing you. The political situation is, to put it mildly, a mess. The city is run by a complex web of powerful guilds and wealthy patrician families, and they are constantly jostling for power. You, a regular citizen, a craftsman or a shopkeeper's spouse, are just a tiny cog in this creaking, groaning machine. You pay your taxes, you abide by the city council's decrees, and you pray you don't get caught in the crossfire of some powerful men's ambitions. It feels like everyone is angry about something, whether it's the price of grain, a new tax, or the latest guild regulations. Historians still debate what the single biggest source of anxiety was for the people of Strasbourg at this exact moment. Was it the famine, the political instability and the feeling of powerlessness, or was it a deeper, spiritual dread? Just last year, a monk named Martin Luther nailed a list of 95 arguments to a church door in Wittenberg, a city far to the north. News travels slowly, but it travels. Rumors of his challenge to the authority of the Pope and the very church itself are starting to ripple through the empire. The very foundations of 1,000 years of faith feel like they're starting to crack, and no one knows what comes next. It's a quiet, simmering panic that you can't quite put your finger on, but you feel it every time the church bells ring. A sense that the world is off kilter, that the old certainties are dissolving like sugar in the rain. So you walk through the oppressive heat of your city, past the grand cathedral whose spire claws at the hazy sky, past the worried faces of your neighbors. The air is so still, so charged with unspoken fear and frustration. It feels like a tangible thing. The city feels like a tangible thing. The city feels like a sealed pot, with the heat turned up high, the pressure building and building inside. You don't know it yet, but the lid is about to blow off in the most surreal way imaginable. You just want to get through the day. Finish your chores, find a shady spot in a courtyard, and pray that tomorrow brings rain or a bit of good news, or just a moment's peace. But tomorrow isn't going to bring peace. It's going to bring something far, far stranger. It's going to bring a woman, and she is going to start to dance. The day it begins feels like any other suffocating day in this long, hot July. You're perhaps on your way back from the market, a small, half-empty pouch of coins tucked into your belt, your mind occupied with the rising cost of flour. You turn a corner onto a familiar narrow street, and that's when you first see it. A small knot of people, maybe a dozen or so, are gathered in a semicircle. It's not an unusual sight. A street argument, a merchant hawking a new trinket, or even a public penance can draw a crowd. But this one feels different. There's no shouting, no bartering, just a strange, focused silence. Curiosity, that ever-present human itch, gets the better of you. You shuffle closer, craning your neck over the shoulder of a stout cooper's apprentice. In the center of the circle, in the dusty, sun-baked patch of open street, is a woman. You might recognize her, perhaps not by name, but by sight. A neighbor, someone you've passed 100 times. History will remember her as Frau WWII. But this is not the joyous, communal dancing you see at weddings or festival days. There is no music. Get this at the start, there was absolutely no sound but the rhythmic, desperate scrape and stomp of her. They're the shoes on the cobblestones. Scrape, stomp, turn. Scrape, stomp, turn. Her arms are slightly raised. Her movement jerky and repetitive. She's not smiling. Her face is a blank mask. Her eyes wide and fixed on something far away that you can't see. Sweat plasters strands of her hair to her forehead and temples. She looks less like she's dancing and more like she's fighting an invisible puppet master who is forcing her limbs into a grotesque parody of a jig. The crowd around you murmurs, "Is she drunk?" One man whispers, "On what?" "It's barely midday." Another scoffs. Possessed, a woman mutters, clutching the small wooden cross around her neck. You feel a chill run down your spine, despite the oppressive heat. The sight is deeply unsettling. It's wrong. It's a familiar human activity, dancing, twisted into something unrecognizable and alarming. Her husband appears, his face a mess of confusion and fear. He rushes to her, grabs her by the shoulders, pleads with her. "What are you doing? Stop this. Come home." You can see his words are having no effect. It's like she can't hear him. She just keeps moving, her body twitching to that silent, frantic beat in her own head, dragging him along with her for a few steps before he lets go in despair. Hours pass. The sun reaches its peak, then begins its slow descent, painting the sky or engine purple. And she hasn't stopped. Not for a drink of water, not to rest. Her movements are sloppier now, her breath coming in ragged gasps, but the frantic energy is undiminished. The initial crowd of curious onlookers has swelled, then thinned, then swelled again as people go about their day, returning to check on the bizarre spectacle. Breathing street theater, a monument to madness that has sprung up in the middle of your neighborhood. And this goes on. Not just for a day. Frau WWII dances through the night, a lone jerking silhouette in the moonlight. She is still dancing when the sun rises the next day. And the day after that. Her shoes are in tatters. Her feet are bruised and bleeding. She's a picture of human exhaustion, yet some unseen force keeps her going. Why her? Why this specific woman? Historians still speculate about the personal anxieties or private griefs that might have triggered this astonishing physical and mental break. We will never know what was going on inside her mind when she took that first, fateful step. The city is buzzing with the news. Frau WWII, the dancing woman, is all anyone can talk about. She is no longer just a curiosity, she is an omen. a living symbol of the city's own frayed nerves. Her relentless, pointless motion seems to mirror the city's own state of anxiety, running in circles, getting nowhere, just getting more and more tired. You pass by the street again on the fourth or fifth day. The scene is much the same. The same woman, the same terrible, silent dance. But as you watch, mesmerized and horrified, something new happens. A man on the edge of the crowd who had been staring intently begins to twitch. His foot starts tapping, seemingly of its own accord. Then, as if a string has been cut, he stumbles forward into the circle, his own arms rising, his feet beginning to shuffle in that same awful, uncoordinated rhythm. He doesn't look at Frau Roffier. He doesn't look at anyone. His eyes are just as vacant, his face just as blank. A collective gasp ripples through the onlookers. You feel the hair on your arms stand up. This wasn't just one person's private madness anymore. It was spreading. The sight of that second dancer stumbling into the open space changes everything. The mood in the crowd shifts instantly from morbid curiosity to a palpable creeping fear. It's one thing to watch a single person's inexplicable breakdown, it's another entirely to see it jump, like a spark from a fire, into someone else. You take a half step back, as if the air itself might be contagious. Within hours there are three more. A young woman, a weaver you think you've seen at the market, suddenly drops her basket of threads. The spools roll across the cobblestones, a splash of chaotic color, but she doesn't seem to notice. Her body starts to convulse in that same jerky rhythm, and she joins the ghastly dance. Then an older man, a stonemason with calloused hands and a dusty apron, throws down his mallet with a clatter. He stumbles forward, his sturdy frame contorting into the same frantic, puppet-like movements. There's no pattern to it. They aren't from the same family, the same guild, or the same parish. They are just people. People you might see every day. And that's what makes it so terrifying. The thing that's taking them over doesn't discriminate. It feels random, arbitrary. And therefore, it could happen to anyone. The original circle of spectators has dissolved, replaced by a much wider, more fearful perimeter. People now watch from doorways and windows, peering out cautiously, the soundscape of the street of Frau Roffier's shoes. It's a messy, unsunrised cacophony of shuffling feet, ragged breathing, and the occasional, involuntary grunt or cry of pain. It sounds like a dozen people all trying to dance to a dozen different songs at once, none of which anyone else can hear. By the end of the first week, there are more than 30 people caught in this bizarre waking nightmare. The small street is no longer big enough. The dance spills out into the larger market square, a writhing, pulsating mass of humanity that disrupts daily life. Carts have to be rerouted. Merchants pack up their stalls, their usual boisterous calls silenced by the eerie spectacle. The heart of the city is being clogged by this silent, desperate party. You watch them, fascinated and repulsed. You see faces you recognize. The baker's wife, her face, usually dusted with flour and kindness, is now a tight mask of agony, sweat and tears carving paths through the grime on her cheeks. A young boy, no older than 12, who should be running errands or playing with friends, is trapped in the mob, his small body jerking uncontrollably, his eyes wide with a terror he can't possibly comprehend. They don't interact. Each one is alone, lost in their own private torment, yet bound together by the same invisible force. One of the strangest and most debated aspects of the phenomenon is the role of imitation. Some historians argue it was a true contagion of the mind, a psychogenic illness spreading through suggestion. Others wonder if some of the early joiners were doing it deliberately. A cold and little-known theory suggests that in a time of such extreme piety and public shame, some might have feigned possession or madness as a way to act out, to escape the crushing social norms, or even just to get attention in a world that rendered them invisible. But if it was an act, it was a terrifyingly convincing one, and it certainly didn't stay an act for long. The sheer physical endurance required goes far beyond simple mimicry. The city is paralyzed. What do you do? Who do you call? The city guards are useless. Yugartas are what passes for them in 1518 or stumped. They gather in hushed, serious groups, stroking their beards and peering at the dancers from a safe distance, their theories ranging from hot blood to astrological alignments. The priests are equally baffled. They sprinkle holy water, which sizzles on the hot stones and does nothing. But their words are lost in the sound of shuffling feet. For you, and for everyone else in Strasbourg, the world has been turned upside down. The normal fears, hunger, poverty, sickness have been temporarily eclipsed by this new, absurd terror. You start avoiding certain streets. You find yourself watching your neighbors with a new kind of suspicion. Is the way they're walking a little too rhythmic? Was that a twitch or just an itch? The psychological pressure on the city's inhabitants is immense. The dance has become a mirror, reflecting the city's own internal chaos. The anxiety that was once a low, background hum is now a shrieking, visible, undeniable fact, stomping itself into exhaustion in the center of your town. And it's only getting bigger. The dancing has been going on for over a week, and the number of afflicted is swelling daily. The city's authorities can no longer ignore it as a localized street corner madness. This is a crisis. The powerful guilds, the patrician families, and the city council, the men who run Strasbourg, are forced to act. They gather in the high silencing chamber of the town hall, the seriousness of their faces at odds with the sheer absurdity of the problem they face. Imagine that meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, the budget. Item 2, an ever-expanding, non-stop dance party that might be killing people. After much deliberation, consulting the city's physicians and scholars, they come to a conclusion. This is not a spiritual matter, they decide. It's not a curse from God or a possession by demons. No, this is a natural disease. A physical ailment. The diagnosis, based on the era's understanding of medicine, which was heavily influenced by the ancient Greek theory of the four humors, is that the dancers are suffering from hot blood. Essentially, their blood has become overheated and feverish, compelling their bodies into this frantic, ceaseless motion. Now, if you have a purely natural physical problem, you need a purely natural physical solution. And this is where their logic takes a spectacular and ultimately disastrous left turn. What is the best way to burn off excess heat and fever? You sweat it out. How do you make these people sweat it out even more than they already are? The answer, so obvious to them, so baffling to us now, is to encourage the dancing. They must dance the fever out of their systems. The cure for the dancing is more dancing. This decision marks a pivotal moment. The city authorities are about to throw gasoline on a fire. They don't just passively allow the dancing to continue, they decide to actively manage it. Their first move is to clear out two of the largest guild halls, the carpenters and the tanners, to create designated indoor dancing spaces. The idea is to get the dancers off the streets, partly to restore public order and partly, perhaps, to contain the spectacle away from the horrified eyes of the general public. You watch as city guards, their faces a mixture of pity and revulsion, gently but firmly try to herd the dancers towards these halls. It's a chaotic, clumsy process. Trying to direct people who are completely unresponsive, lost in their own frenzied worlds, is like trying to herd cats in a hurricane. Some dancers are guided inside, their feet never stopping their shuffle stomp with them even as they cross the threshold. Others writhe away, remaining in the open-air market squares. The city is now dotted with these dance stones. The strangeness escalates. The authorities decide that if the dancers are to be cured by dancing, they must have the proper encouragement. They need a beat. So they hire musicians, drummers and pipers. Skilled men who usually play at weddings and festivals are now contracted by the city for a much grimmer purpose. You see them setting up on wooden platforms, their expressions grim, their eyes avoiding the gazes of the people they're playing for. The first time you hear the pipes strike up a tune, a fast, relentless reel, it's a surreal and chilling moment. The cheerful, folksy music, usually a sound of celebration, is now the soundtrack to a scene of mass suffering. The music isn't for joy, it's a prescription, a forced medication made of sound. The music doesn't soothe or cure them. It fuels them. The beat seems to supercharge their movements, making them wilder, more frantic. The dancers who had been moving to their own internal, silent rhythms now have a powerful, external one to latch onto. Their jerky motions become slightly more synchronized, but also more violent. The sight is grotesque. A crowd of people, their faces etched with pain and exhaustion, being driven to dance even harder by a relentlessly cheerful flute melody. It's like a scene from a nightmare painted by Hieronymus Bosch. Historians are still puzzled by this official response. Was it purely a medical mistake based on the flawed science of the day? Or was there a social control element to it? By organizing the chaos, were the authorities trying to reassert their dominance over a situation that was spiraling completely out of their control? By creating official dance halls and hiring musicians, they turned a spontaneous, terrifying outbreak into a sanctioned, managed event. It was a desperate attempt to put a frame around the madness, to give it rules and a location. But all they really did was build a bigger, louder, more efficient stage for the plague to perform on. And the audience, the rest of Strasbourg's terrified citizens, could only watch as the show got bigger and deadlier. The city's grand plan is now in full swing. The Guildhall has been cleared, and a large wooden stage has been hastily constructed in the middle of the grain market, the very heart of the city's commerce. This isn't a hidden affair anymore, it's a full-blown public spectacle, endorsed and organized by the city council. The cure is on display for all to see. You see the musicians, a rotating cast of pipers, fiddlers, and drummers playing in shifts. They look exhausted, their faces grim. This is the strangest gig of their lives. They play upbeat, fast-paced tunes, the kind of music that would normally have you grabbing a partner and laughing. But here, the music is a relentless engine driving a machine of human misery. The beat is a command, not an invitation. And the dancers respond. Oh, they respond. The introduction of music is like pouring fuel on a bonfire. The chaotic, individual shuffles and jerks start to coalesce around the driving rhythm. The effect is mesmerizing and horrifying. 100, then 200, then more bodies, all moving with a new terrifying energy. They are not dancing with the music, they are being danced by it. Their limbs flail with more force. Their heads snap back and forth. Their torn shoes stomp on the wooden stage, creating a thunderous, hollow sound that echoes through the nearby streets. The authorities even hire strong men, healthy laborers, to dance alongside the afflicted. The idea, another baffling piece of 16th century logic, is that these healthy dancers could help hold up the exhausted ones, keeping them on their feet so they could continue the curative process. Imagine that job. You're paid to grab a person who is convulsing, delirious, and soaked in sweat, and dance with them, forcing their nearly collapsed body to keep moving to the relentless beat of a drum. You're a dense partner in the marathon of the damned. You stand in the crowd, a safe distance from the stage, watching this government-sanctioned madness unfold. The scene is a sensory overload. The constant, thumping music, the thunder of hundreds of stomping feet, the sight of the writhing mass of people, the smell of sweat and dust. It's a carnival from hell. You see people you know up there. Your neighbor, the one with the tidy garden, is now a whirlwind of flailing limbs, her face a blank slate of exhaustion. The young man who works for the butcher, his strong arms now flailing uselessly at his sides, his eyes rolled back in his head. The strategy, of course, is a catastrophic failure. Instead of burning the hot blood out, the constant motion combined with the July heat is pushing the dancers' bodies far beyond their breaking point. The stage becomes a place of collapse. The non-stop exertion leads to heart attacks, strokes, and sheer, fatal exhaustion. The music doesn't stop. When someone falls, they are dragged to the side by city officials. Their limp bodies a stark testament to the failure of the cure. And the plague keeps spreading. The spectacle doesn't scare the madness away, it seems to invite it in. The combination of the pulsating music and the sight of hundreds of people locked in this hypnotic, rhythmic movement creates a powerful, suggestive atmosphere. It's like a massive atmosphere. It's like a massive open-air trance. People in the crowd, who came merely to watch, suddenly feel the same irresistible pull. A twitch in the leg, a shaking in the hands. Then, they too are stumbling forward, as if drawn by an invisible string, climbing onto the stage to join the doomed choir. The city's cure has become the most effective recruitment tool for the disease. One of the more peculiar and less discussed historical tidbits is what the dancers wore. Accounts mention that some were given special dancing shoes, red ones in fact. Was this part of the prescribed treatment, a uniform for the afflicted? Or is it a later embellishment to the story? Historians aren't sure. But the image is powerful: a sea of tormented dancers in red shoes, a splash of festive color in a landscape of despair, stumping their way towards oblivion on a makeshift stage. You feel a growing sense of dread, a feeling that the people in charge have no idea what they're doing. They are like children trying to fight a fire with toy buckets. Their attempts to impose order have only amplified the chaos. They've taken a strange, terrifying phenomenon and given it a stage, a soundtrack, and a spotlight, turning all of Strasbourg into a theater of the absurd. The air is thick not just with heat and sound, but with the terrifying realization that the institutions you trust to protect you, the council, the doctors, are utterly powerless. In fact, they are making it worse. The beat goes on, the dance continues, and the stage is getting more and more crowded. The days bleed into one another, each one hotter and louder than the last. The great dancing experiment is a full-blown, citywide disaster. The stage in the grain market is the epicenter, but the dance has its own geography now. It spills into alleyways, it pulses in church squares. You can't escape it. Even if you stay indoors, you can hear it: the faint, relentless thud of the drums, the distant manic shrill of the pipes. It's the new heartbeat of Strasbourg, and it's a rhythm of insanity. You've been trying to keep your distance. You stick to the quieter back streets, you do your errands as quickly as possible, your head down, your eyes averted from the main squares. You try to block out the sounds, to focus on the normal things: the price of cabbage, the mending that needs to be done, the leak in the roof. You are a spectator, a horrified but safe spectator. That is the story you tell yourself. But the fear is a subtle poison. It seeps into your dreams. You dream of dancing, of your own legs moving without your permission. You wake up in a cold sweat, your heart pounding, and for a terrifying second, you have to consciously check if your feet are still. They are. You breathe a sigh of relief. One afternoon, you're in your small home, perhaps trying to block out the noise by focusing on a task: churning butter, polishing a leather strap, something repetitive and mundane. The distant music seems to find its way through the thick timber walls. Thump, 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 thump goes the drum. It's a fast, driving beat. You find your hand moving in time with it. You pause, annoyed. You force your hand to still. You take a deep breath and go back to your task. But the rhythm is inside you now. Thump, thump, thump. You feel it in your chest. Your foot starts to tap on the wooden floorboards. Tap, tap. You look down at it, frowning, as if it belongs to someone else. Stop it, you mutter to yourself, pressing your foot firmly to the floor. For a moment, it obeys. The house is quiet again, save for the incessant, far-away music. Then you feel it twitch in your calf. An involuntary muscle spasm. You've had them before, everyone has, but this one feels different. It's followed by another in your thigh. A strange, tingling energy seems to be buzzing up your leg. You stand up unnerved, and walk across the room, hoping to shake it off. But the movement feels odd. Your steps feel light, springy, not entirely under your own control. The music from outside seems louder now, clearer, as if the musicians were right outside your window. You clutch the edge of a wooden table, your knuckles white. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, a frantic counter-rhythm to the music in the street. Your whole body feels fizzy, like a bottle of shaken wine, the pressure building, looking for a release. A wave of panic washes over you. This is how it starts. This is what you've heard people describe. The twitching, the tapping, the feeling that your own body is a traitor. You fight it. You fight it with every ounce of your will. You sit back down hard on a stool. You grip your legs with your hands, trying to physically hold them still. You close your eyes and try to think of anything else: a prayer, a shopping list, your spouse's face. But the music bores into your skull. The beat is insistent. It's a question, and your body desperately wants to answer it. What was the tipping point for the hundreds of people who succumbed? Historians who favor the mass hysteria theory point to this exact moment, the culmination of prolonged, Extreme psychological stress, the combination of famine, disease, and spiritual anxiety had worn the collective psyche of Strasbourg down to a raw nerve. The dancing was the spark, and the stage and music were the accelerant. For an individual, seeing the dance day after day, hearing the music, fearing it, obsessing over it, could create a feedback loop of terror and suggestion in the brain. The fear of losing control becomes so overwhelming that it actually causes you to lose control. Your body enacts the very thing you dread most. A powerful tremor runs through your whole frame. Your arms lift slightly from your sides, your fingers splayed. Your head begins to bob a slow then faster nod. You are losing. The battle for your own sovereignty is being lost. You open your eyes, and the familiar room of your home looks strange, distant. The only thing that feels real is the terrifying, exhilarating, irresistible urge to move, to get up, to join the sound. Your body wants to dance, and your mind, exhausted from weeks of fear and resistance, is starting to agree. You can't stop it. You can't stop it anymore. You are not a spectator now. The dance is coming for you. The surrender is not a conscious choice. It's a dam breaking. One moment you are fighting, your mind a fortress of no. The next, the walls crumble and the river pours through. You are on your feet, though you don't remember the act of standing. Your legs, which moments ago you were trying to pin down with the force of your will, are now light and full of a strange, buzzing energy. The distant music is no longer just a sound, it's a magnetic force, pulling you. You stumble out of your home, leaving the door ajar. The familiar street looks different, dreamlike. The oppressive afternoon sun feels less like a weight and more like a spotlight. Your first few steps are clumsy, a drunken shuffle. Your body is a new instrument you don't know how to play. Your arms swing awkwardly, your feet moving in a jerky, unpracticed rhythm. It's not dancing. Not yet. You are being drawn towards the market square, towards the source of the music. You don't decide to go there. Your feet just take you. You pass people you know. They see you. You see the look on their faces, the same look of pity and horror you once gave the others. A woman gasps and pulls her child close. A man quickly crosses the street to avoid you. You are one of them now, afflicted, marked. Your social identity is dissolving with every uncontrolled step. A neighbor, you are a dancer. As you get closer to the stage, the music gets louder, more powerful. It's a physical thing, a wave of sound that washes over you, and your body responds. The clumsy shuffle evolves. Your feet begin to lift higher, to stomp in time with the drums. Your arms, no longer awkward, begin to swing and circle. A spin, uncontrolled and dizzying, sends you careening into a wall. You feel a flash of pain in your shoulder, but it's distant, unimportant. The compulsion to move overrides everything else. Pain is just a footnote. You reach the edge of the square. Before you is the great wooden stage, a writhing, pulsating mass of 100, 200, maybe more bodies. From a distance, it looked like a single organism. Now, up close, you see the individuals, and you stumble forward, up the few steps, and you are absorbed into the crowd. The experience of being inside the throng is a chaotic whirlwind. There is no personal space. You are constantly bumping into other dancers, their sweaty bodies sliding against yours. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale breath, and something else, a faint, metallic scent you realize is blood. The sound is deafening, the relentless music, the thunder of feet on wood, the groans and cries of the people around you. Your body is not your own. You watch your legs kick, your arms flail, as if you're a passenger in a runaway vehicle. You try to stop. For a fleeting second, you might manage to make your legs go rigid, but the pressure builds up inside you, an unbearable tension, until it explodes into another series of frantic movements. It's a physical manifestation of a panic attack, one that you can't escape because you are trapped inside the body that is having it. You are thirsty. Your throat is a desert. You see buckets of water at the edge of the stage, but the thought of navigating the dense, thrashing crowd to get there is impossible. The urge to dance is primary, absolute. It supersedes thirst, hunger, exhaustion, pain. This complete loss of bodily autonomy is one of the most terrifying aspects of the accounts. But was it truly 100% involuntary for everyone, all the time? Some modern interpretations, drawing from studies of trance states, suggest a more complex reality. It might have been a dissociative state where the conscious you is detached, watching the body perform actions fueled by the subconscious. Perhaps there were moments of lucidity, of partial control, quickly swallowed by the overwhelming compulsion. The line between I cannot stop and I have lost the will to stop becomes impossibly blurred. You are swept along in the human current. By a woman to your left, her eyes widened on seeing, spins and her elbow catches you hard in the ribs. You gasp, but your feet don't miss a beat. A man in front of you stumbles, his knees buckling. Before he can fall, the sheer press of bodies around him holds him up, his legs continuing their ghastly shuffle. There is no camaraderie here, no one helps anyone. No one even seems to see anyone else. Each dancer is an island of misery, trapped in a sea of shared madness. This isn't a communal experience, it's a profoundly lonely one performed in a crowd. The sun beats down, the music shrieks, and you dance, and dance, and dance. Hours melt into an unrecognizable sludge of time. Is it still the same day? The sun's position in the sky is the only clock, and you barely register it. You are deep inside the machine now, a cog in the apparatus of misery. Your focus narrows to the few feet of wooden planks in front of you, the space your flailing limbs occupy. It's from this vantage point, trapped in the heart of the chaos, that you begin to see the faces. Before, from the safety of the crowd, the dancers were a single, writhing entity. Up close, they resolve into a gallery of individual portraits of despair. You are constantly jostled and spun around, so new faces swim into your vision and then disappear. There's no joy here, not a single smile. If you had any lingering thought that this was some form of ecstatic, religious frenzy, the faces would erase it. To your right is a man in the coarse brown tunic of a laborer. Hes broad-shouldered and strong, but his strength is being turned against him. His powerful legs, used to carrying stone or timber, are now pistons in a pointless engine, stomping relentlessly. His eyes are squeezed shut, his face contorted in a grimace of pure agony. It's the face of a man trying to lift a weight that is just too heavy, but the weight is his own body. Sweat and tears mix freely on his cheek, dripping from his beard onto his chest. Hes not dancing, Hes resisting, and his resistance is expressed through dance. A spin forced by the momentum of your own out-of-control body brings you face to face with a young woman. She can't be more than 16. Her hair has come undone from its braids and whips around her head as she twitches and jerks. Her mouth is open as if in a silent scream, but no sound comes out except ragged, shallow breaths. Her eyes are what get you. They aren't vacant or tranced out. They are lucid, and they are filled with a profound, pleading terror. She seems to be looking right at you, right through you, as if screaming for help from inside a soundproof box. Her body betrays her, but her eyes tell the truth. Then she's spun away, lost back in the churning sea of bodies. You catch a glimpse of an elderly woman, her face a web of wrinkles, her movements smaller and more fragile than the others, but just as relentless. She looks confused, bewildered, like she's woken up in a world she doesn't recognize. Is she even aware of what her body is doing, or is she lost in a dementia-like haze, her physical actions completely disconnected from her mind? This brings up a fascinating, and still debated, point among scholars: the consciousness of the dancers. Were they all in a trance? Were some faking? Or was it a spectrum of states? It's highly unlikely it was one size fits all. Some may have been in a full dissociative fugue, with little to no awareness. Others, like the girl with the terrified eyes, might have been fully conscious prisoners in their own bodies. This latter possibility is, in many ways, the most terrifying. It's not just a loss of control, it's the awareness of that loss. You realize something else. They are crying. So many of them are crying. Not loud wailing sobs, but quiet, hopeless stares that track through the grime and sweat on their faces. They are mourning for themselves, even as they participate in their own destruction. They beg for water, they cry out for their families, they plead with God to make it stop. But their pleas are swallowed by the music, and their legs never cease their motion. You look down at your own feet. The leather of your shoes is scuffed and torn. Your ankles are swollen dry. You are one of these faces now. You don't know what expression your own face is wearing. Is it the grimace of pain? The wide-eyed terror? The vacant stare? You try to arrange your features into a neutral mask in act of defiance, but you can't even control the muscles in your own face. The exertion is pulling your lips back into a pained snarl. You are a portrait of despair too, just another face on the dance floor of the damned. The sun finally dips below the leaning rooftops, plunging the market square into a landscape of long, distorted shadows. But the day doesn't end. There is no respite. The city authorities, in their infinite wisdom, have brought out torches and lanterns. The dancing must continue day and night. The cure must be pursued relentlessly. So the stage is now an island of flickering, orange light in the vast darkness of the city. The flames cast huge, monstrous shadows of the dancers onto the walls of the surrounding buildings. The spectacle, already grotesque in the daylight, becomes a hellish vision at night. The jerky, frantic movements are exaggerated, made demonic by the firelight. It's as if the entire square is filled with giant, tormented ghosts. Your body has moved beyond simple exhaustion into a state of surreal, painful automation. Every muscle screams. Your joints feel like they're filled with sand and broken glass. Your feet are a universe of pain-blistered bleeding, and swollen to twice their normal size inside the remnants of your shoes. The initial, frantic energy has subsided, replaced by a lower grade, but no less compulsory twitching. It's a marathon runner's final, delirious stagger, stretched out for hours and hours. Time becomes a meaningless concept. There is only the sequence of light and dark. The sun rises a merciless white eye in the sky, promising another day of heat and torment. It crawls across the sky, beating down on you, baking the sweat and grime onto your skin. Then it sets, and the torches are lit again, starting the cycle anew. Was that one day? Or two? You've lost count. You are living in a perpetual, agonizing present. Your mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, begins to detach. You float somewhere above your own head, watching your body jerk and stumble below. You are no longer driving, you are just cargo. This dissociative state offers a thin, flimsy barrier against the physical agony. You observe the pain rather than fully inhabiting it. You note the thirst in a detached, clinical way the body requires water. You register the sharp pain in your knee. As a piece of data, there is damage to the joint. This detachment allows you to notice things. You notice the musicians. They play in shifts, a constant rotation of fresh tormentors. You see the weariness in their faces too. Their fingers must be raw from the pipes and strings, their arms aching from the drums. But they are paid by the city, so they play on. Their expressions a mixture of pity and professional duty. They are the engine drivers of this train to nowhere. You notice the families of the dancers. They gather at the edge of the stage, held back by city guards. Their faces are masks of grief and helplessness. They hold out loaves of bread and skins of water, pleading with their loved ones to stop, to eat, to drink. Occasionally, a dancer, in a moment of near-lucid agony, might recognize a face in the crowd. You see a man's eyes flicker with recognition as his wife calls his name. He reaches out a trembling hand towards her, his mouth forming her name. But his legs betray him, spinning him back into the heart of the crowd, his brief connection to his old life severed. One of the more bizarre and debated details from contemporary accounts is the claim that some dancers would leap and jump with surprising strength, even after days of non-stop movement. Is this historical exaggeration, or a way to make the story more dramatic? Or could it be a real phenomenon? Some neurologists speculate that in such extreme states, the brain can release massive floods of adrenaline, enabling short bursts of energy that seem to defy normal physical limits. Desperate attempt to respond to a perceived mortal threat, even if the threat is the body itself. As another dawn breaks, painting the sky in soft shades of grey and pink, a profound sense of hopelessness settles over you. The sun is rising on another day, that will be exactly the same as the last. An endless repeating loop of suffering. You see the city waking up around you, people opening their shutters, the smell of morning fires, the distant sound of a church bell. The world is moving on, but you are stuck here in this timeless, torturous present. The idea of stopping, of sleep, of silence, becomes a fantasy, a memory of a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. You are a ghost trapped in a body that cannot rest. And the sun climbs higher, and the pipers strike up another relentlessly cheerful tune. Days and nights have merged into one long, continuous nightmare of motion. Your mind, battered by exhaustion and pain, seeks patterns, seeks reasons. In a world that has become so utterly irrational, the human brain craves an explanation, any explanation to anchor itself. And in 16th century Europe, when the line between the physical and the spiritual was thin and porous, explanations inevitably turned to the supernatural. Whispers begin to circulate among the dancers in their brief, gasping moments of semi-lucidity. The words are fragmented, passed in a hoarse cry or a desperate murmur as you stumble past one another. The devil a man hisses, his eyes wide with terror, before his body lurches away in a violent spasm. A curse from the bishop, another woman moans, pointing a trembling finger towards the distant spire of the cathedral. The theories multiply, reflecting the deepest fears of the populace. For some, this is clearly the work of Satan. The dance is a demonic parody of holy ecstasy, a mockery of gods sent to claim the souls of the weak and sinful. They believe the devil himself is the unseen piper, and you are all his puppets. This thought terrifying and, in a strange way, clarifying. If it is the devil, then this is a spiritual battle. It gives the suffering a meaning, a context. You are not just sick, you are a soldier on the front lines of the cosmic war. For others, the blame lies closer to home. It's a curse, but a human one. Did someone in the city anger a powerful sorcerer? Or perhaps it's a punishment from a slighted saint. This explanation is popular because it offers a sliver of hope. If a curse can be cast, it can be broken. If a saint is angry, they can be appeased. It transforms the situation from a random medical crisis into a problem of negotiation with unseen forces. Then there is the third, and perhaps most pervasive, theory that begins to take hold. This is a divine punishment. God himself is angry with Strasbourg. He has sent this plague to chastise the city for its vanity, its budding heresies. The dancers are not the primary sinners, they are the instruments of God's wrath, their public suffering a living sermon for all to witness. You are a walking embodiment of the city's corruption, but it also carries a strange weight of importance. Your agony is not pointless, it is a holy message written in the language of pain. This question of cause demonic, divine, or something else is a subject of intense debate even among historical commentators. Some accounts, written by clerics and educated elites of the time, lean heavily on supernatural explanations. However, it's a point of academic contention whether the common dancers themselves would have articulated their experience in such theological terms, or if these were interpretations layered on top by observers. It's likely the dancers' beliefs were a messy, terrified jumble of folklore, faith, and fear. You see these beliefs manifest physically. A woman convinced she is possessed begins to scream obscenities, her Tourette-like outbursts adding another layer of horror to the scene. A man, believing himself to be a vessel of God's anger, adopts a beatific, martyred expression, his eyes turn to the heavens, even as his body convulses. The dance floor becomes a stage for individual religious dramas, each person acting out their own theory of damnation or salvation. The most potent and enduring of these supernatural theories begins to coalesce around a single name, whispered from dancer to dancer: Saint Vitus. He is a saint known to be powerful, but also wrathful. A martyr from centuries ago who, according to legend, had the power to inflict uncontrollable dancing upon those who displeased him. The Saint Vitus dance was already a known term for a neurological disorder that caused jerky movements, so the connection was easy to make. The name catches on like wildfire. It provides a specific culprit, a focus for their terror and their prayers. It's not a vague, amorphous evil anymore. It has a name and a story. People start crying out his name. Saint Vitus. Forgive us, Saint Vitus. The chaotic, individual cries for help begin to unify into a single, desperate appeal. You find yourself mouthing the name too. Saint Vitus. It's a name to hang your suffering on. It's a hook on the wall of madness. Believing in a wrathful saint is somehow less terrifying than believing in nothing at all. It gives the nightmare a face. And if it has a face, maybe, just maybe, it can be reasoned with. The theory that Saint Vitus is behind the plague spreads from the dance floor to the city council. The authorities, having witnessed spectacular failure of their medical solution, are now desperate enough to try anything. The hot blood theory is quietly abandoned. The stage and the musicians, once the symbols of their enlightened, naturalistic approach, are now seen as a catastrophic misstep. The first and most visible change is the abrupt silencing of the music. One afternoon, the pipers and drummers are ordered to stop. The sudden absence of the relentless beat is shocking. For a moment, the only sounds are the scrape and stomp of hundreds of feet, the ragged gasps for air, the moans of pain. The silence that follows the music is somehow louder, more harrowing than the noise itself. Without the driving rhythm, the dancers' movements become more chaotic and spastic again, but the overall energy seems to drop, just slightly. The external fuel source has been cut off. Next comes the religious counter-offensive. The city's priests who had been on the sidelines are now thrust into the center of the crisis. Processions are organized. You, still trapped in your relentless motion, see them approaching the market's queer line of somber men in vestments, chanting prayers in Latin. Their voices are low, solemn drone against the backdrop of suffering. They carry heavy wooden crucifixes and banners depicting the Virgin Mary and other saints. The air, once thick with sweat and dust, now fills with the sweet, cloying scent of incense from swinging censers. They circle the dance floor, sprinkling holy water on the afflicted. Droplets land on your hot, grimy skin. For a moment, you hope for a miracle, a cooling release. But nothing happens. Your body continues its traitorous jig. The water evaporates, leaving behind a faint, keen smell that is quickly overwhelmed by the stench of the crowd. The priests try exorcisms. You see them single out a particularly frantic dancer, surrounding them, holding up a cross and shouting commands in Latin and German. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I command you, unclean spirit, to depart from this servant of God. The dancer, caught in the grip of their own mania and now the center of intense, focused attention, often reacts violently, thrashing and screaming, which only serves to confirm the priest's diagnosis of demonic possession. But, after the priest moves on, the dancer is still dancing. The ritual provides a moment of high drama, but no lasting cure. The city's most sacred relics are brought out from the crypt of the cathedral. These are the city's spiritual treasures, centuries-old slivers of bone from saints, fragments of the true cross, and other holy objects, encased in ornate gold and silver reliquaries. They are paraded around the dancers, held up for them to see and venerate. This is supposed to be the nuclear option of faith, a direct confrontation between the holiest of holies and the source of the affliction. A little-known fact from this period is the sheer economic and social power of relics. Cities vied for the most powerful ones, believing they offered tangible protection and prestige. For Strasbourg to bring out its top-tier relics showed the absolute depth of their desperation. But the relics fail. The dancers, in their delirious state, barely seem to register their presence. They are too lost in their internal torment to be roused by the sight of gilded boxes. The saints remain silent. If it is a curse, is not broken. This failure of the established religious rituals is profoundly unsettling for the entire city. It's one thing for the doctors to be wrong, but for the priests, the relics, the very power of the church to prove ineffective. It strikes at the very foundation of their worldview. If God will not or cannot help, then who can? The academic debate continues. Was this failure a key factor in priming the population of Strasbourg for the Protestant Reformation, which would sweep through the city just a few years later? It's impossible to prove, but the sight of the church's impotence in the face of such a Basel crisis must have planted seeds of doubt in many minds. For you trapped on the dance floor, the failed rituals are just another chapter in a long story of disappointment. You've had the medical cure failed. Now the spiritual cure has failed. Each new attempt, each new theory, is a small spark of hope that is quickly and cruelly extinguished. You are beyond the help of doctors and beyond the help of priests. The authorities have thrown everything they have at you, science and faith, and nothing works. You are truly terrifying me on your own. The failure of both medicine and faith leaves a vacuum, and it's filled with death. The dancing has been going on for weeks now. The human body is not designed for this. The constant brutal exertion, combined with the summer heat and a lack of proper food, water, and rest, begins to claim its victims in ever-increasing numbers. The first ones to die are often the most shocking. It's not always the oldest or the frailest. Sometimes it's a strong young man, his heart simply giving out from the strain. One moment he is there, a whirlwind of motion next to you, his face a mask of pained exertion. The next his movements become suddenly rigid, his eyes roll back in his head, and he collapses to the wooden stage with a sickening thud. The first time you see it happen up close, it's a jarring, horrific event. The dance is so dense that the man doesn't even fall flat immediately. He is held up for a moment by the press of bodies around him, a dead man dancing, before he slumps down to the floor. For a terrifying second, the dancers immediately around him stumble over his body, their own legs refusing to stop, before city guards rush in to drag the corpse away. There's no dignity in it. The bodies are pulled from the stage unceremoniously, their limbs still slightly twitching in a gruesome after-effect of their weeks-long torment. They are hauled away on carts, their faces covered in the dust and grime of the dance floor. The living just keep dancing, sometimes through the very spot where someone lay dead moments before. The primary causes of death are what modern physicians would identify as heart attacks, strokes, and heat exhaustion. In 1518, they are simply described as people whose life force was extinguished or who danced themselves to death. The chronicles of the time state that at the plague's peak, as many as 15 people were dying each day. While this number is a point of contention among historians, some argue it's an exaggeration to dramatize the event. The fact that a significant number of people died is undisputed. This wasn't just a social phenomenon anymore, it was a lethal epidemic. The constant presence of death changes the atmosphere on the dance floor. The initial frantic terror gives way to a dull, grinding despair. You know you could be next. You feel the fluttering in your own chest, the dizzy spells that wash over you, the moments where the world goes dark at the edges. Each one feels like a premonition. You look at the faces of the dancers around you and you see the same awareness. They are the walking dead just waiting for their turn to fall. This is where the psychological toll becomes almost unimaginable. You are actively, physically participating in the activity that is killing you, and you are unable to stop. It's a form of physiological torture where the victim is forced to be their own executioner. You are running a marathon you never signed up for, and the finish line is a grave. A little-known but poignant detail recorded by one contemporary chronicler was that some dancers, in their final moments, seemed to have a brief window of lucidity. As their bodies began to fail, the frantic energy would sometimes desert them, and they would stand still for a few seconds, looking around with confused, terrified eyes, as if waking from a long nightmare, only to collapse from the fatal damage that had already been done, the mind returning just in time to witness the body's complete destruction. The city is in a state of quiet, horrified mourning. The church bells, which once rang for mass, now toll almost constantly for the dead. The sound becomes a new, grim soundtrack for the city, replacing the pipes and drums. Every citizen knows someone, or knows of someone, or knows of someone who was on that stage. The dance is no longer a spectacle, it is a wound on the body of the city, and it is weeping. You step over a dark, wet patch on the wooden planks. You don't know what it is, spilled water, sweat, or something else. You don't want to know. You just keep moving. The fear of death is a constant companion, but even that fear is worn down by the sheer, overwhelming exhaustion. You are too tired to be terrified anymore. You are just a body in motion, waiting for the motion to cease. As the death toll mounts and the city's best efforts, both scientific and spiritual, continue to fail, a new theory begins to bubble up, not from the halls of power or the church, but from a more practical earthbound source. People are starving. The famine that preceded the plague is still a grim reality. Bread is the staple of life, and the main ingredient for bread is rye. And something, some people start to whisper, is wrong with the rye. This brings us to one of the most compelling and debated scientific explanations for the dancing plague ergotism. It's a theory that replaces supernatural curses and psychological hysteria with a tiny, insidious culprit, a fungus called Cl. avispes purpurea or ergot. Here's how it works. This fungus grows on rye and other cereals, especially during wet springs followed by hot summers. The exact weather conditions reported in the region around 1518th, when the infected rye is harvested and milled into flour, the ergot gets mixed in. To the naked eye, the flour might look slightly off color, the bread might taste a bit bitter, but in a time of famine, you eat what you can get. You don't throw away bread. And when you eat that tainted bread, you are ingesting a cocktail of powerful psychoactive alkaloids. One of them is ergotamine, which constricts blood vessels, leading to a host of horrifying physical symptoms. Another is lysergic acid, from which, centuries later, a chemist named Albert Hofmann would synthesize LSD. You, as a dancer, wouldn't know any of this, of course, but you would feel its effects. The theory suggests the dance wasn't a dance at all, but a series of excruciating physical symptoms. The ergotamine would cause severe muscle cramps, spasms, and convulsions. Your limbs would be twisting and jerking not because you wanted to dance, but because you were being racked by uncontrollable seizures. It would also reduce blood flow, leading to a burning sensation in the limbs, a symptom historically known as St. Anthony's fire. It would feel like your arms and legs were on fire from the inside out. Perhaps the frantic stomping and shaking was a desperate, instinctual attempt to relieve this agonizing burning. Then there are the psychological effects of the lysergic acid. You would be experiencing vivid, terrifying hallucinations. The world around you would melt and warp. The faces of your fellow dancers would morph into demonic masks. You might see visions of saints or devils, hear music that wasn't there, and feel a profound sense of detachment from reality, or a terrifying paranoia. This fits perfectly with the accounts of bizarre behavior and the supernatural explanations the dancers themselves offered. They weren't just making it up, they were describing the hallucinations their poisoned brains were serving them. The ergotism theory seems to check a lot of boxes. It explains the physical convulsions, the hallucinations, the bizarre behavior, and even the contagious nature of the plague. It wasn't spreading from person through suggestion, but from a common, contaminated food source that entire neighborhoods were eating. However, the academic community is far from unified on this. There's a major argument against the ergot theory, and it's a big one: coordination. While ergotism causes muscle spasms and convulsions, it typically doesn't result in the kind of coordinated, day after day dancing described in the chronicles. The victims of ergotism are usually too sick, too racked with pain and digestive distress, to dance for weeks on end. Furthermore, ergotism often leads to gangrene, causing fingers, toes, and even limbs to turn black and fall off. While the chronicles of the dancing plague are lurid, they don't mention gangrene, which seems like a detail they wouldn't have omitted. So, historians are left with a puzzle. Could it have been a specific, unusual strain of ergot that produced these particular symptoms? Or, and this is a popular modern synthesis, could it have been a combination of factors? Perhaps widespread, low-level ergot poisoning created the initial physical symptoms: the twitching, the anxiety, the hallucinations, and then mass hysteria took over, shaping those raw symptoms into the specific cultural performance of a dancing plague. The ergotism provided the match, and the city's tense, superstitious atmosphere provided the kindling. You wouldn't understand the science, but you would know your body was at war with itself. You'd feel the fire in your veins, see monsters in the shadows, and your body would jerk and twist in ways you couldn't control. You might look at the gritty piece of dark rye bread being offered by a family member and, in a moment of hallucinatory paranoia, see it writhing in your hand. The very thing you need to survive could be the source of your poison. It's a cruel, perfect trap. As the name Saint Vitus echoes through the streets and among the tormented dancers, it becomes more than just a name for a curse. It becomes the central clue to the entire mystery, a thread that connects the events of 1518 to a long and strange history of faith, healing, and neurological disorders. To understand what's happening to you, you have to understand who this saint is. So let's pull back from the chaos of the dance floor for a moment and look at the figure of Saint Vitus himself. He was the local saint from the Alsace region. He was a Sicilian martyr from the time of the Roman Emperor Diocletian, around the 3rd century AD. The story, as it was told in your time, is a dramatic one. Vitus was a young boy, the son of a pagan senator, who converted to Christianity in secret. He was said to have performed miracles, including driving out a demon that had possessed the emperor's son. However, his faith led to his persecution. The legends are lurid and graphic, designed to inspire awe and horror. He was thrown into a cauldron of boiling oil and molten lead, but emerged unharmed. He was then thrown to a lion, but the lion peacefully lay down at his feet and licked him. Finally, he was martyred on a rack. It is from this collection of legends that his patronage arises, because he was said to have cured the emperor's son of a shaking sickness like epilepsy, or a similar convulsive disorder. He became the patron saint to call upon for protection against epilepsy, lightning strikes, and animal bites. And most importantly for you, he became associated with dancing. But how? This is where history gets murky and the legends fork. One story claims that on his feast day, people would dance before his statue to ensure a year of good health. Over time, this joyous dancing became conflated with the very sickness he was meant to cure. Another, darker legend is the one that has taken root in Strasbourg. It tells that if you angered Saint Vitus, perhaps by not showing him proper reverence or by dancing sinfully on his feast day, he would punish you by inflicting a terrible, uncontrollable dance upon you. This is the version that matters now. You are not celebrating him, you are being punished by him. The term Saint Vitus's dance or chorius antivitae had been in use for centuries before 1518. It was the common name for a real medical condition, what modern doctors know as Sydenham's chorea. This is a neurological disorder, often a complication of a streptococcal infection like rheumatic fever, that primarily affects children and adolescents. Its symptoms are unmistakable rapid, involuntary, jerky movements of the face, hands, and feet. The movements are often described as dance-like, hence the name. So when Frau Roffier started her dance, and others joined in with similar jerky, uncontrollable movements, the label was ready and waiting. It fit the visual evidence perfectly. The people of Strasbourg were seeing something they recognized, something that already had a name and a supernatural explanation attached. This pre-existing cultural framework is crucial. It shaped how everyone, from the doctors to the dancers themselves, interpreted the event. They weren't seeing a mass hysteria event, they were seeing a classic, albeit massive, outbreak of Saint Vitus's dance. This is a key point that historians who argue against a purely psychological extent it followed, the script of a known ailment. But did all 400 or more dancers of Sydenham's chorea? That's medically impossible. It doesn't occur in epidemics like this. This leads to another fascinating synthesis. Maybe the plague started with a few genuine cases. Perhaps Frau Roffier, or a few of the other initial dancers, did have a neurological condition like chorea or even ergot-induced convulsions. Their very real, very frightening symptoms were then witnessed by a population under immense psychological stress. The rest of the dancers then, through the power of mass hysteria, began to unconsciously mimic the symptoms they were seeing. The dance was a culturally ingrained response to extreme stress, and Saint Vitus provided the perfect, terrifying narrative to explain it. For you in the middle of the ordeal, these distinctions are meaningless. All you know is that a powerful, angry saint has you in his grip. Every convulsion of your body is proof of his wrath. The name is not a diagnosis, it's a verdict. You are guilty, and this dance is your sentence. You plead to him for mercy, you bargain with him in your mind. You curse his name in a fit of agony. Saint Vitus is no longer just a figure in a stained glass window. He is your tormentor, your dance partner, your judge. The death toll is rising. The medical cures have failed. The religious ceremonies have proven useless. The city is now gripped by a full-blown panic. that has infected every level of society, from the beggars in the alleys to the powerful men in the guildhalls. The authorities who tried to manage the crisis with such confidence are now staring into the abyss of their own powerlessness. Their control over the city is slipping, and they know it. The city council convenes in near constant, frantic sessions. The atmosphere inside the town hall is no longer one of reasoned debate. It's one of barely concealed terror. The sounds of the distant tolling bells and the faint, ghostly scraping of dancing feet are a constant reminder of their failure. They have gone from being the city's protectors to being the wardens of a sprawling, open-air asylum, and the inmates are dying on their watch. Their initial response, the more dancing cure, now looks like a monumental, deadly blunder. Recriminations are flying. The physicians who proposed the hot blood theory are discredited, their reputations in tatters. The guild masters who lent their halls and the council members who approved the staging musicians are now desperate to distance themselves from the decision. It was a well-intentioned mistake, they argue, based on the best knowledge of the time, but that's cold comfort to the families burying their dead. The panic of the powerful manifests as a desperate search for a scapegoat. If it's not hot blood, and it's not a demon the priests can exorcise, then someone must be to blame. This is a dangerous moment. In medieval and early modern Europe, when inexplicable disasters struck, the hunt for a human cause oft unturned ugly, targeting marginalized groups, foreigners, heretics, and most commonly, those accused of witchcraft. Whispers of dark magic, which had been circulating among the populace, now find more receptive ears among the elite. Could this be an organized attack, a coven of witches who have cursed the city? It's a tempting explanation because it offers a clear enemy that can be hunted, tried, and punished. It's a way to restore a sense of order through violence. While historical records don't indicate a full-blown witch hunt occurred in Strasbourg as a direct result of the dancing plague, the fact that this was considered is a sign of their utter desperation. The economic life of the city has ground to a halt. The market in the central square, usually a bustling hub of commerce, is now a stage of death. Farmers from the surrounding countryside are afraid to bring their goods into a city they see as cursed. Trade caravans are rerouted to other towns. The guilds, the economic engines of Strasbourg, are paralyzed. Their members are either dancing dead or too afraid to work. The famine, which was one of the root causes of the initial anxiety, is now getting worse because the city has ceased to function. The plague is creating a feedback loop of misery. This paralyzing fear is not just about the dancers. It's about what the dance represents: a total breakdown of the natural and social order. Your body is supposed to obey your will. The city is supposed to obey its leaders. The faithful are supposed to be protected by God. All of these fundamental assumptions have been shattered. The world no longer makes sense. This is a crisis of meaning, and it is terrifying. Historians who study social panic often point to this stage as the most dangerous. When authority figures lose control and admit they have no answers, the collective anxiety can curdle into chaos or desperate, ill-advised action. The leaders of Strasbourg are at that tipping point. They have to do something. The one thing they cannot do is nothing. The pressure from the citizenry, from the church, and from their own terror is immense. And so out of this cauldron of fear and failure, a final, desperate plan is forged. It's a plan that combines the now dominant St. Vitus theory with an act of extreme public penance and, essentially, banishment. They have failed to cure you in the city, so they will cast you out. They are going to take all the remaining dancers on a forced pilgrimage, a last-ditch appeal to the very saint they believe is punishing them. It's an act of collective surrender. A Hail Mary pass to the heavens. They are going to march you to the mountain. The decision has been made. The city cannot hear you, so it will expel you. The plan is to transport all remaining dancers to the mountain shrines dedicated to St. Vitus, high in the Vosis Mountains, a few days' journey away. It is an act of both piety and purification. By moving the sickness outside the city walls, the leaders hope to cleanse Strasbourg itself, while simultaneously placing the afflicted directly into the hands of the saint who holds power over them. The logistics of this operation are a nightmare. You are not a compliant pilgrim. You are part of a writhing, uncontrollable mass of hundreds of people. The city guards, supplemented by hired strongmen, are tasked with the unenviable job of rounding you up. It's a chaotic and brutal process. They form cordons, human walls to funnel the dancers out of the market squares and guild halls. You are no longer just a person with a strange affliction, you are a piece of human livestock being herded. You are prodded with wooden staffs, grabbed by the arms, and pushed in the desired direction. You feel hands gripping you, forcing your stumbling, dancing body along a path you have not chosen. The compulsion to dance is still there, but now it's overlaid with the physical force of others. You are a puppet being manhandled by other puppets. Your journey through the streets of Strasbourg is a grim procession. People who are not afflicted watch from their windows, their faces a mixture of fear, pity, and a certain grim relief. They are watching the city purge itself of its nightmare. The sick are being exiled. You catch the eye of a former neighbor. There is no wave, no word of encouragement. Just a silent, sad stare. You are being cast out. The city gates, which have felt like the boundaries of your entire world, are opened. You are pushed through them out into the open countryside. The feeling is surreal. After weeks strapped in the claustrophobic, noisy confines of the city, the open space, the vast sky are a sensory shock. The air smells different of grass and damp earth, but you have no time to appreciate it. You are still dancing, your feet, accustomed to the hard cobblestones, now stumble on uneven, grassy terrain. Wagons have been prepared, not for you to ride in comfort but to contain you. You are lifted, half pushed, half thrown, into the back of a large wooden cart with high sides. You land in a heap with a dozen other dancers. The space is horribly cramped. You are a tangle of flailing limbs and sweaty bodies. The wagon has no roof, it's an open-air cage. It begins to move, the iron-rimmed wheels grating and creaking, and your bizarre, agonizing journey begins. The sight of these wagons must have been one of the strangest spectacles of the entire affair. A convoy of carts, filled with people who cannot stop twitching and jerking, rolling slowly through the Alsatian countryside. Guards walk alongside, their faces grim, ensuring no one escapes. Family members trail behind, weeping, following their loved ones on this desperate, last-ditch pilgrimage. This act of exiling the sick is a well-documented, if brutal, historical practice. From leper colonies to ships of fools, societies have often dealt with inexplicable or incurable illness by physically removing the afflicted. It's a way of creating a cordon sanitaire, a quarantine to protect the healthy majority. But there's a point of historical debate here. Was this purely a public health measure, or was it also a performance of piety? The city was demonstrating its faith and its submission to Saint Vitus. It was a grand, public gesture of "we give up. They are yours. Please, take them." Inside the wagon, the misery is amplified. You are crushed against others, their involuntary movements jarring your already aching body. The sun beats down on you. Dust from the road coats your skin, turning your sweat into a gritty paste. The compulsion to move is still absolute, but you have no room to do so. You are forced into a constant, agonizing state of spazzing and twitching in a confined space. It's a torture chamber on wheels. You look out of the side of the cart. You see the spire of Strasbourg Cathedral shrinking in the distance. It was your home. It was the center of your world. Now you are being driven away from it, perhaps forever. You don't know where you are going, not really. You just know you are being taken away. You are the city's sin, its sickness, its shame, being carried out into the wilderness to be offered up as a sacrifice. The journey is a blur of misery. Days are spent in the jolting, cramped wagons under the hot sun. Nights are spent in makeshift encampments, still twitching, still moving, under the cold, distant stars. Finally, you begin to ascend. The road gets steeper, winding its way up into the forested slopes of the Vosges Mountains. The air grows cooler, cleaner. You are approaching the place of supposed healing, the mountain shrine of Saint Vitus. It's not a grand cathedral. It's a small rustic chapel, likely built of stone and timber, nestled in a clearing high on the mountain. There might be a cave or a grotto nearby, a place considered especially holy, where the saint's presence is believed to be strongest. For centuries, This has been a place of pilgrimage for those suffering from the St. Vitus's dance, the actual neurological disorder and other nervous afflictions. This is the saint's home turf. You are unloaded from the wagons. Your legs, stiffened, cramped from the journey, immediately resume their dreadful, stumbling dance on the sacred ground. The remaining dancers, a crowd of ragged, filthy, and half-starved people, are herded towards the shrine. The atmosphere is thick with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. This is the final courtroom. The ritual that unfolds is a fascinating blend of Christian ceremony and what appears to be much older folk magic. This wasn't a standard mass. It was a specific, prescribed rite for this very specific problem. The priests are there, but they seem to be following a script rooted in local tradition. You are forced to stand before the altar of St. Vitus. Inside the chapel, it's dark and cool. The air is heavy with the smell of old stone, incense, and melting beeswax. Light filters through a small high window, illuminating a carved wooden statue of the saint. His painted eyes seem to stare down at you, his expression stern and unreadable. You are given offerings to hold small wax effigies of arms and legs, symbolizing the parts of your body that have betrayed you. You are also given small crosses and told to renounce the devil, and to renounce Saint Vitus himself. This last part is strange and a point of much historical discussion. Why renounce the very saint you are appealing to? Some scholars suggest it was a form of spiritual shock therapy. By renouncing the saint, you were symbolically breaking his curse, rejecting his power over you. It was an act of defiance, framed within a plea for mercy. Others believe it was a misunderstanding or a corruption of an older ritual. The most peculiar part of the ceremony is what you are given to wear. Your torn, filthy shoes are taken from you. In their place, you are given new shoes, red shoes. The priests paint a circle of holy oil on the top and bottom of these shoes, and they are tied to your bruised and swollen feet. The symbolism of the red shoes is debated to this day. Was red the color of martyrdom, linking your suffering to the saints? Was it meant to symbolize the street, Anthony's fire, the burning sensation of ergotism? Or was it an element from a pre-Christian folk belief, a magical charm to ground you or protect you, absorbed into the Christian rite? Whatever the reason, you are now shod in blood-red shoes, standing before your tormentor. Then you are led in a procession, forced to circle the altar, and then lead outside to circle the chapel itself. You are made to dance on holy ground, in your magic shoes, as the priests chant prayers for your deliverance. And here is where the power of psychology, belief, and ritual comes into sharp focus. For some of the dancers, something remarkable happens. The combination of factors is immense: the exhausting journey, the dramatic change in environment, the solemnity of the ancient shrine, the powerful authority of the priests, the bizarre and deeply symbolic ritual, and the collective, focused belief that this is the place where it ends. For a mind that has been battered into a state of extreme suggestibility, this is a potent psychological cocktail. It's a pattern interrupt on a massive scale. It's not a sudden, miraculous cure for everyone. But for some, the frantic energy begins to subside. The violent jerks soften into tremors. The relentless stomping slows to a shuffle. The ritual provides a powerful, external narrative of healing, and their minds, desperate for an escape, begin to latch onto it. The curse is being lifted. The curse is being lifted. The saint is being appeased. The nightmare is ending. For the first time in weeks, you might feel a flicker of control returning to your own limbs. The puppet master's strings are beginning to loosen. The air at the mountain shrine feels different. It's not just a cooler temperature, it's a shift in the psychological weather. The desperate, chaotic energy that fueled the dance in the city has been replaced by the solemn, focused atmosphere of the ritual. The performance of the cure is having a real effect. It doesn't happen all at once, like a switch being flipped. It's a slow, uneven fading out, like a song reaching its final, drawn-out chord. For you, the change is subtle at first. The relentless rhythm in your head, the beat that has been your constant companion for weeks, begins to lose its sharp, commanding edge. It's still there, a faint, nagging pulse, but it's no longer an absolute tyrant. The consuming compulsion to move begins to recede, leaving behind the raw, physical symptoms. Your legs still twitch and tremble, but it feels less like an order and more like a deeply ingrained habit, or the aftershocks of a long series of seizures. You find you can, for a few seconds at a time, force your feet to be still. The effort is immense, requiring every ounce of your concentration, and it leaves you shaking and gasping. But it's possible. You have regained a tiny sliver of sovereignty over your own body. You watch as others around you experience the same slow release. A man who had been spinning like a top for weeks slows, stumbles, and then leans against the stone wall of the chapel, his body shuddering violently but his feet, for the first time still. A woman drops to her knees, not in a collapse of exhaustion, but in a deliberate, controlled movement. She remains there, head bowed, her shoulders shaking with sobs of what looks like overwhelming relief. The music of the plague is fading. The thunderous stomping quiets to a widespread, nervous shuffle. The grunts and cries of agony are replaced by the sounds of weeping and exhausted prayer. The priests, seeing their ritual is having an effect, continue their chanting, their voices rising with a new confidence. They are winning. Saint Vitus is relenting. Historians who favor the mass psychogenic illness theory see this as the critical final act. The cure worked not because of any intrinsic magical or religious power, but because it was the perfect psychological counterspell. The afflicted were removed from the environment that triggered and sustained the hysteria of the city, the stage, the music. They were subjected to a powerful, authoritative ritual that everyone, including the dancers, believed would work. It was a mass placebo effect, a collective agreement to be healed. The belief in the curse was so strong that only an equally strong belief in the cure could break it. Not everyone is healed. For some, the dance continues, their body still racked by whatever affliction has taken hold, be it neurological or psychological. They are the tragic outliers, the ones for whom the ritual is not enough. They are gently led away to be cared for by monks or nuns who live near the shrine, their fate uncertain. The chronicles are largely silent about what happened to them. But for you, the tide has turned. The fog in your brain begins to lift. The terrifying hallucinations have ceased. The world around you, the dark trees, the grey stone of the chapel, the concerned faces of the priests start to look solid and real again. You are slowly, painfully returning to yourself. You find you can sit down. The simple act of bending your knees and lowering your body to the ground is a monumental achievement. You sit on the cool earth, your back against a tree, and a wave of exhaustion so profound it feels like a physical weight washes over you. It's the accumulated fatigue of weeks of non-stop motion, and now that the imperative to dance is gone, your body is finally allowed to feel it. You look down at your red shoes caked in dirt. They look absurd, like props from a play you can barely remember starring in. With trembling fingers, you struggle to untie the laces. Your hands are clumsy, shaking, but they are your hands again. You pull the shoes off. Underneath, your feet are a mangled, swollen mess of blisters and bruises. You feel the pain, sharp and clear, no longer a distant, academic fact but an immediate, agonizing reality. And the pain, ironically, is a confirmation. It means you are back in your own body. The music has stopped. The dance is over. The silence is the first thing you truly notice. Not just the absence of the frantic, internal rhythm that has been the soundtrack to your life for what feels like an eternity. In its place, there is a deep, ringing quiet in your head, the kind of quiet that follows a long and deafening noise. It's a silence that is both peaceful and deeply unsettling. You are sitting on the ground, leaning against the rough bark of a pine tree. The air smells of damp earth and resin. You take a breath, a real deep, conscious breath. It feels like the first one you've taken in a month. Your body, however, is a landscape of ruin. A dull, throbbing ache radiates from every joint. Your muscles, pushed far beyond their limits, feel like frayed ropes, twitching and trembling with phantom energy. You are acutely aware of the blisters on your feet, the rot chafing on your skin, the deep hollow ache of hunger in your stomach. You look around at the other survivors. You are a flock of broken birds. People are scattered across the clearing around the shrine, most sitting or lying on the ground in attitudes of utter collapse. Some are weeping silently. Others just stare into space, their eyes holding a haunted, 1,000-yard stare, You have all been to a warned back, but the war was with yourselves. You see a man trying to stand up. He pushes himself onto his hands and knees, his arms shaking violently. He gets one foot under him, then the other, and shakily rises to his full height, swaying like a newborn foal. A slow, incredulous smile spreads across his face. He has control again. He takes a single, deliberate step. Slowly, cautiously, you are given food and water, a piece of coarse bread, a ladle of thin broth. It's the most delicious meal you have ever tasted. The simple act of bringing the food to your own mouth, of chewing and swallowing by your own volition, is an act of profound reclamation. You are re-inhabiting your own life once more, deliberate action at a time. But the psychological scars are deep. The world feels fragile, unreal. You find yourself flinching at sudden noises, your muscles tensing, a phantom echo of the dance threatening to take hold. You have intrusive flashes, vivid images of the desperate faces on the dance floor, the sight of someone collapsing, the feel of the relentless, stomping rhythm. You have been a prisoner in your own body, and the memory of that powerlessness is a trauma that will live under your skin for a long time. You have a new, terrifying knowledge of how easily the mind and the body can be betrayed. The historical debate over what the recovery truly entailed is significant. Was it a permanent cure? Or did many of the survivors suffer from what we would now call post-traumatic stress disorder, or even lasting neurological damage? The chronicles, focused on the miracle of the cure, are mostly silent on the long-term aftermath for the individuals. They tell the story of the plague's end, not the quiet, personal struggles that followed. As the day wears on, a new sense of order begins to emerge. The priests and guards, their faces showing a mixture of relief and awe, start organizing the return journey. But this one will be different. The wagons that brought you here as caged, tormented souls will take you back as wounded, but free survivors. You look at the people around you, your fellow dancers. You didn't know them before, and you didn't know them during the ordeal. You are all islands of private misery, but now, in the quiet aftermath, you share a unique and terrible bond. You see a woman, the one you remember with the terrified eyes, and you catch her gaze. There's a flicker of recognition, a shared understanding that needs no words. You both survived. You are members of a club no one would ever want to join. Night falls on the mountain. You are given a rough wool blanket. You lie down on the hard ground, pulling it up to your chin. For the first time in weeks, you are going to sleep. You close your eyes, half expecting the familiar jerk and twitch to take over. But it doesn't. There is only the deep ache of your exhausted body and the profound, beautiful stillness. You are sinking into the darkness, into rest, into silence. The return to Strasbourg is nothing like the departure. The journey down the mountain is slow, deliberate. You are a passenger now, not cargo. You ride in the wagon, your body bruised and aching, but your mind is your own. You watch the familiar landscape of Alsace unfold, the forests giving way to rolling fields and vineyards. Each landmark is a step back towards a life you thought you had lost forever. As the convoy approaches the city walls, you see people gathering to watch. But the atmosphere is different now. The fear and revulsion have been replaced by a tentative, awestruck curiosity. You are not the horrifying spectacle you were when you left. You are the living proof that the curse has been lifted, that the city's penance has been accepted. You are escorted back through the city gates not as an exile, but as a returning pilgrim. The streets are lined with onlookers. The silence is profound. You are helped down from the wagon, and you take your first painful, voluntary steps on the cobblestones of your home city. You are a ghost returning to the world of the living. In the days and weeks that follow, the city slowly begins to piece itself back together. But it is a changed city. The great wooden stage in the grain market is dismantled. The timber repurposed, as if to erase the memory of the madness it hosted. The guild halls are aired out and scrubbed clean. The silence left by the absence of the dancing is gradually filled by the familiar sounds of urban life, the blacksmith's hammer, the merchant's call, the rumble of carts. But there's a somber undertone to it all. The authorities now face the grim task of accounting. How many were afflicted? How many died? The exact numbers are lost to history, caught in the fog of medieval record-keeping and historical exaggeration. The most commonly cited figure, originating from the chronicles of the time, is that the plague grew to affect around 400 people. The death toll is even harder to pin down, with some accounts claiming up to 15 people a day were dying at its peak. Modern historians tend to be more conservative, suggesting the total number of deaths was likely in the dozens, perhaps between 50 and 100. But even that is a staggering number of people to die from dancing. Each death represents a family shattered, a workshop without its master, children left orphaned. The economic cost is also immense. Weeks of lost productivity, disrupted trade, and the expense of the city's failed and successful interventions have left the civic coffers drained and the economy damaged. The famine, which never really went away, feels even more acute now. But the deepest cost is psychological. The city has endured a collective trauma. There is a new fragility to life, a new awareness of how quickly things can fall apart. People look at each other differently. The memory of neighbors and friends lost in a fitable madness is not something that fades quickly. This is a point where historical analysis often falls short, as the sources rarely detail the personal long-term impact. Did the survivors face stigma? Were they seen as tainted or weak? Or were they revered for having endured a holy trial? The answer is likely complex and varied from person to person. A strange, unrecorded aspect of the aftermath might have been the social reintegration. How do you resume your life as if nothing happened? You, a survivor, are a living reminder of the madness. You walk through the streets, your gait still stiff and pained. You bear the physical scars, the swollen joints, the feet that will ache for the rest of your life, but you also bear the invisible ones. You are now part of the city's folklore, a character in a story that will be told for generations. The city of Strasbourg, having faced a crisis that defied both science and religion as they understood them, was left to heal. The dancing plague of 1518 became a benchmark for the bizarre, a cautionary tale whispered about for centuries. The city counted its dead, patched its economy, and tried to forget. But the memory of that summer, when hundreds of its citizens were seized by a dance they could not stop, would be forever etched into its history. A strange and terrifying footnote about a time when the world went mad and the only thing to do was dance until you drop. Now that you've walked out of the nightmare and the dust has settled on the streets of Strasbourg, let's step out of 1518 and into the present day. Let's look back at what happened to you with the cold, clear eyes of modern psychology. The priests called it a curse, the doctors called it hot blood, but the most enduring explanation today has a different name: mass psychogenic illness, or as it's more dramatically known, collective hysteria. So what is it exactly? It's not about people faking it or going crazy in the colloquial sense. It's a genuine, powerful, and fascinating phenomenon where a group of people, often under immense stress, begin to experience real, physical symptoms of an illness for which there is no identifiable physical cause. It's the ultimate example of the mind-body connection, where psychological distress manifests as a physiological condition. Imagine it like this: your brain is the body's command center. If the command center is subjected to a massive, sustained overload of stress, fear, anxiety, hopelessness, its wiring can start to get crossed. It can start sending out faulty signals to the rest of the body. The result isn't an imagined symptom, it's a real, physical one. A real headache, a real fainting spell, or in your case, a real, uncontrollable muscle spasm. The mass part of the equation is what makes it so explosive. Think of it like yawning. When you see someone yawn, you often feel an almost irresistible urge to yawn yourself. It's a subconscious, mimetic impulse. Now amplify that by 1,000 and replace the yawn with a symptom born of extreme terror. Here's how the theory applies to your experience. The first-person Frau Trophier begins to exhibit strange symptoms. Maybe she had an underlying neurological issue, or maybe she was simply the first personal stress level reached a breaking point, manifesting in a buzzer physical tic. Now others see her. These onlookers are already primed for anxiety. They are hungry, sick, poor, and spiritually adrift. They see her symptoms in their own brains. Already on high alert, ask a terrifying question. Could that happen to me? This intense fear and constant observation of the symptom creates a hypervigilant state. You start paying obsessive attention to your own body. Every normal twitch, every muscle ache is suddenly interpreted as a sign that you are catching it. This fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The anxiety of getting the illness is so great that it actually triggers the very same symptoms in your own body. It spreads not through a virus, but through the power of suggestion and shared anxiety. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for this theory is the form the illness takes. The symptoms of a mass psychogenic event are almost never random. They are shaped by the cultural beliefs of the people involved. In your time in Strasbourg, the idea of a dancing plague sent by an angry Saint Vitus was already a known concept. So when the stress became unbearable, it didn't manifest as fainting spells or headaches, it manifested as the very thing your culture had taught you to fear. The hysteria performed a script that was already written. Your mind, in its distress, latched onto the most available and dramatic explanation, and your body followed suit. A little known but fascinating aspect of these events is that they tend to affect people with less social power more frequently historically: women, children, and the poor. This isn't because they are weaker, but because they often bear the brunt of social and economic stress, while having the fewest outlets to express their distress. The dance could be seen as a desperate, subconscious, and non-verbal protest by a populace that had no political voice. It was a way of screaming things are unbearable in a society that wouldn't listen to their words. So when you stumbled out of your house and joined the dance, it wasn't a curse or a poison that took you. It was your own mind, buckling under an impossible weight of fear, and finding a terrifying, prepackaged, and socially acceptable way to express its breakdown. You weren't possessed by a saint, you were possessed by an idea. And in a community gripped by fear, an idea can be just as contagious and just as deadly as any plague. So if the leading theory is that you and your fellow citizens were victims of a mass psychogenic illness, the next logical question is why then? Why there? What made Strasbourg in 1518 the perfect petri dish for this bizarre outbreak of mental contagion? It wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of misery, a convergence of multiple crises that bore down the collective psyche until it simply broke. Let's start with the most basic, primal stressor: hunger. You were living through a period of prolonged famine. For several years, the harvest had failed. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a life-or-death struggle. The chronicles of the era are filled with grim accounts of people eating cats, dogs, and even resorting to cannibalism in the most desperate regions. For you in the city, it meant chronic malnutrition. Your body was weak, your immune system compromised. There was the constant gnawing anxiety of not knowing where your next meal would come from. This kind of deep, existential insecurity creates a baseline of stress that makes you vulnerable to everything else. On top of the famine, there was disease. This was long before the germ theory of disease. Illness was a constant, mysterious, and terrifying presence. You were surrounded by ailments you had no name for and no cure for. Leprosy was a visible and terrifying reality. Smallpox could wipe out entire families. And new, frightening diseases like the English sweating sickness, a virulent illness that could kill within hours, were appearing on the continent. Their arrival heralded by panic tremors. Every fever could be a death sentence. This creates a state of hypervigilance about health, a fear that your own body could betray you at any moment. Then you layer on the social and political instability. Strasbourg was a complex, fractious city. The powerful guilds and patrician families were in a constant state of low-level conflict. For the common person, this meant feeling like a pawn in the games of powerful men. You were subject to their taxes, their laws, their feuds, with no real say in your own governance. This feeling of powerlessness is a potent psychological toxin. It breeds resentment and a sense of hopelessness. But the final, and perhaps most crucial, ingredient was the profound spiritual crisis of the age. For 1,000 years, the Catholic Church had been the unquestioned center of European life. It provided not just religious guidance, but a complete framework for understanding the universe. But by 1518, that foundation was cracking. The Church was plagued by corruption that was visible to everyone. From the sale of indulgences to the opulent lifestyles of bishops, there was a growing sense that the institution meant to guarantee your salvation was itself sick. And just a year before your dance, in 1517, Martin Luther had nailed his 95 Theses to that church door in Wittenberg. The ripples of this act were just beginning to reach you. The very idea that the Pope might be wrong, that the Church's authority could be challenged, was world-shattering. It was like discovering that gravity might be optional. This religious uncertainty created a deep, terrifying void. If you couldn't trust the Church, who could you trust? So you have a population that is starved, sick, politically powerless, and spiritually adrift. They are living in a state of extreme, prolonged, multifaceted anxiety. They are a bundle of raw nerves. This is the textbook definition of a vulnerable population. The social fabric is stretched so thin it's about to snap. There's a debate among sociologists and historians about which of these stresses was the key one. Was it the famine? The religious turmoil? The truth is, it was likely the combination. It was the feeling that every pillar of your life, physical, social, and spiritual, was crumbling at the same time. You were living in what felt like the end times. All this simmering, unspoken panic needed was a spark. It needed a focal point. And it found one in the bizarre, public, and deeply unsettling spectacle of a lone woman dancing uncontrollably in the street. Frau Rothier's personal breakdown became a mirror for the city's collective breakdown. Her strange dance was the symptom that the entire city, in its misery, unconsciously decided to adopt. It was the straw that didn't just break the camels, that it made the camel get up and dance. As you recovered in the quiet aftermath, you might have felt that your experience was a singular, unique nightmare, a madness that could only have happened in your city at that specific time. But if we pull the lens back even further, we see that you weren't alone. The dancing plague of 1518, while perhaps the most famous and well-documented case, was just one eruption in a long, bizarre history of similar dancing manias and other mass psychogenic events. Your ordeal was part of a pattern. These phenomena, often called choromonaies, seemed to flare up across mainland Europe, particularly in the German-speaking lands of the Holy Roman Empire, from the 14th to the 17th centuries. These were also centuries of immense turmoil, marked by the Black Death, incessant warfare, famine, and the religious upheaval of the Reformation, the same kinds of stresses that plagued your city. One of the earliest and most dramatic recorded incidents happened long before your time in 1374, along the Rhine River. In towns like Aachen and Cologne, thousands of people were suddenly seized by the same dancing compulsion. Chroniclers of the time described them dancing for hours, days, even weeks, shouting, screaming, and claiming to see terrifying visions. They formed huge processions moving from town to town, their numbers swelling as they went. They seemed unable to stop until they collapsed from exhaustion or were taken to a shrine for a ritual cure, often one dedicated to, you guessed it, Saint Vitus. And it happened after your time too. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, smaller-scale outbreaks of compulsive dancing, shaking, and convulsing were reported in Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. It became a known, if rare, feature of the cultural landscape. But the phenomenon wasn't limited to dancing. The form of the mass hysteria often changed to fit the fears and beliefs of the time. A particularly strange and lesser-known example is the cat nuns of a French convent in the Middle Ages. The story goes that one nun began to meow like a cat, a deeply unsettling, unblasphemous act for a woman of God. Soon, other nuns in the convent began to meow as well. To the horror of the surrounding community, it only stopped when soldiers were brought in and threatened to whip them. The physical threat was enough to break the psychological contagion. Fast forward a few centuries to the Salem witch trials in 1692. Bewitchment of the young women in Salem, their fits, contortions, and accusations is now widely seen by historians as a classic case of mass psychogenic illness. In a rigid, paranoid Puritan society, their immense psychological stress didn't manifest as dancing, but as the symptoms of demonic possession, the ultimate expression of evil in their worldview. The debate among historians is whether these events are all directly linked or if they are independent outbreaks caused by similar underlying conditions. The dancing manias of the 14th to 17th centuries seem to be part of a single, long-running cultural phenomenon, with Saint Vitus as the recurring narrative thread. The later events, like the WWII nuns or the Salem trials, show how the same psychological mechanism can produce different symptoms depending on the cultural context. And it still happens today, though the manifestations are usually less dramatic. In 2012, a group of teenage girls at a high school in Leroy, New York, began to develop uncontrollable tics, twitches, and verbal outbursts, similar to Tourette's syndrome. After extensive medical testing found no physical cause, experts concluded it was a case of mass psychogenic illness, likely triggered by the high-stress environment of modern adolescents. The fear was of an unknown environmental toxin, a modern-day curse. So your experience in 1518 wasn't an isolated anomaly. It was a dramatic chapter in the long, strange history of the human mind under pressure. You were part of a chain of events stretching across centuries, a testament to the fact that when a society is pushed to its breaking point, its members can collectively express their shared trauma in the most surreal and unexpected ways, whether it's by dancing, mewing, or twitching. The script changes, but the play remains the same. We've explored the theories from curses to contaminated bread to collective hysteria. We've placed your experience within the broader sweep of history. It would be satisfying to close the book here and say case closed. But history is rarely that neat. The truth is, despite all our modern knowledge, the dancing plague of 1518 remains shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. There are lingering questions, unstubborn details that refuse to fit perfectly into any single explanation. This is the moment where we have to be honest and say historians are still arguing about this. The consensus leans towards mass psychogenic illness, likely exacerbated by famine and disease, but it's a consensus with asterisks and footnotes. Let's start with the biggest lingering mystery: the sheer physical endurance. Can mass hysteria alone really explain people dancing for weeks? We know the power of the mind is immense, but the laws of physiology are unforgiving. Dancing to the point of death from exhaustion, heart attack, or stroke requires an almost superhuman level of physical output, while adrenaline and a dissociative state can push the body beyond its normal limits. The scale and duration described in the chronicles test the boundaries of what seems medically possible. This is the strongest point for those who still argue for a biological cause, like a refined version of the ergotism theory. They contend that only a powerful neurotoxin could fuel that kind of relentless, destructive motion. Then there are the contradictions in the primary sources themselves. Our entire understanding of the event is built on a contemporary or near-contemporary accounts written by people like the physician Paracelsus, the jurist Sebastian Brandt, and the chronicler Iamelin. But these men had their own biases and agendas. They were trying to interpret the event through the lens of their own medical, religious, or social beliefs. Were their descriptions literal and accurate? Or were they prone to exaggeration to make a point or tell a more dramatic story? For example, is the number 400 dancers a literal head count, or was it a common medieval way of saying a whole lot of people? This uncertainty about the reliability of the sources is a constant battle for historians. We are trying to reconstruct a surreal event through the eyes of people who were just as baffled as we are. Another point of intense academic debate is the ending. Did the pilgrimage to the St. Vitus shrine really work as well as the stories claim? The narrative is almost too perfect. The city fails. The church steps in with a specific ritual at a specific place, and the plague stops. It's a wonderful story about the power of faith. But was it that clean? It's possible the plague was already burning itself out naturally. The number of susceptible people may have reached its peak, and the weakest had already died, so the epidemic was waning on its own. The pilgrimage might have just coincided with this natural decline, and the priests, eager to claim a victory for the church in a time of waning authority, wrote the story that way. The cure may have been more of a symbolic end cap than the actual cause of the recovery. And what about the very first dancer, Frau WWII? The entire edifice of the mass hysteria theory rests on her being the spark. But we know almost nothing about her. Why did she start dancing? Was she mentally ill? Did she have a neurological disorder? Was she the first victim of ergot poisoning? Or, as one provocative but improbable theory suggests, did she do it on purpose? Some scholars have speculated that her death might have been a deliberate, desperate act of public protest against her husband or her miserable circumstances, an act that then spiraled out of control into a genuine mass phenomenon. We will never know. She is the patient zero of one of history's strangest epidemics, and her personal story is lost forever. These unresolved questions are not a failure of history, they are a reflection of its nature. The past is a foreign country, and we are reading its story through faded, translated, and biased documents. The dancing plague of 1518 is a perfect example of where the historical record hits a wall. We can theorize, we can debate, we can build compelling arguments, but we cannot know for sure. The event remains a mystery, suspended in the space between what is physically possible, what is psychologically plausible, and what people in a desperate time believe to be true. And maybe that's where its power lies, as a chilling reminder that sometimes reality is stranger than any theory we can invent to explain it. The leaves are turning now. The brutal, suffocating heat of that July has given way to the crisp, cool air of autumn. The sky is a different blue, a paler, gentle shade. You walk through the streets of Strasbourg, the same streets where the nightmare unfolded, and it feels like a different city, a different lifetime. You pull your woolen cloak a little tighter around your shoulders. There's a permanent ache in your joints, a ghost of the dance that reminds you of its reality, especially on cold mornings like this. You walk with a slight limp you don't think will ever truly go away. You find yourself in the grain market. It's bustling with life again. Merchants are haggling over the price of the new harvest, which was thankfully bountiful. Women are inspecting apples and squash, their chatter filling the air. The sound is normal. It's the sound of a city breathing again. But for you, the space is haunted. You can't help but see the ghostly outline of the wooden stage that stood here. You can almost hear the phantom echo of the pipes and the thunder of stomping feet beneath the lively market noise. You see a vendor drop a cabbage, it rolls across the cobblestones, and for a heart-stopping second, you see the shape of a fallen body. You blink, and it's just a cabbage. You continue your walk, your feet taking you past the Carpenter's Guildhall. Its doors are open now. You can hear the rhythmic rasp of a saw, the clean, sharp scent of fresh-cut wood spilling out into the street. It's just a workshop again, but you remember when it was a hall of horrors, a sealed room full of writhing bodies and the smell of sweat and despair. How do people see you now? It's a question you ask yourself every day. Your survival has made you a strange kind of celebrity. Some people, you notice, still cross the street to avoid you, as if the madness might be dormant, contagious. They look at you with a fearful pity. To them, you are a walking reminder of a shameful, terrifying time they would rather forget. But others look at you with a kind of quiet awe. They see a survivor, someone who went into the fire and came back. They nod at you with a new respect. You are a living miracle, proof that the saint's anger could be appeased. You are both a pariah and a pilgrim, and you are never sure which face you will be met with. The long-term effects on the survivors on people like you is something the chroniclers will never write about. Historians centuries from now will debate it, but they can only speculate. You have no name for the way your heart sometimes hammers in your chest for no reason, for the sudden cold sweat that breaks out on your skin when you hear a distant drum. You have no words for the dreams that still come, dreams of motion you cannot stop. You simply know that some part of you never left that mountain shrine, and some part of the frantic dance will live in your bones forever. You pass a group of children playing in a narrow alley. They are holding hands, laughing, and dancing in a circle. A simple, joyful children's game. One of them, a little girl with red ribbons in her hair, spins and spins until she is dizzy, collapsing in a fit of giggles. And you freeze. Your breath catches in your throat. For a terrifying instant, you feel it a phantom beat, an echo in your muscles, the ghost of the compulsion. But it's only a ghost. It has no power over you now. You watch the children, and a profound sadness washes over you. You have survived. Life goes on, but you are now a keeper of a strange and terrible story. A story of a time when the world went mad. You are an echo on a street that has fallen quiet. And so, the story is over now. The echoes on the cobblestone streets have faded, leaving only the soft, quiet hum of the night around you. The fever of the dance has broken, and a deep, profound stillness has taken its place. Let the memory of Strasbourg and its strange, sad story begin to dissolve, like watercolor in the rain. Feel the tension leave your own body, the way the dancers finally let go of theirs. There is no relentless beat to follow now, only the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breathing. Inhale and exhale. Each breath is a small, quiet rebellion against the chaos of the day. Each breath is an act of peace. You are not being danced by some unseen force. You are simply here, in this moment, safe and still. The journey is done. Imagine your thoughts are like the last few turning leaves, drifting down from the trees, settling softly on the ground. Let them rest. There is nothing more to understand. There is only the feeling of the weight of your blanket, the comfort of the pillow beneath your head, the gentle, soft darkness that is gathering at the edges of your awareness. You are drifting now, on a slow and peaceful current, away from the waking world and into the quiet landscapes of your own dreams. The story has been told, and now there is only rest. The end of the article. Good night.